Hi, Mr. Norton, and we're going to continue our series in our economics lectures. And this time, we're going to be talking about the decision-making process. So some of the things that'll get you prepared to be successful in this lesson will be some scenarios that I'm going to put up right now. Okay, would you rather play video games or do housework? Would you rather eat McDonald's or Burger King? Have you ever gone to work simply because you needed the money? Have you ever done something at home you wouldn't normally do out of fear of being punished by a parent? Now, all of those individual choices that you have right there, something played a role in it. Okay, so for Burger King or McDonald's, you may have picked which one you got the most satisfaction out of. When we're talking about the video games or the housework, if you chose to do video games, chances are you chose video games because you got the most enjoyment out of it. So each of these have something in play that are going to basically be described in the things we're going to be talking about today. Okay? So some of the things that people will do is they will take into account the cost and benefit when they make a decision. Now, the thing that students need to be aware of is that cost doesn't always necessarily mean it costs you in terms of money. Like, for example, right now I'm working. What's the cost associated with doing work? Well, right now it's costing me free time that I would spend doing other things. Now, we're going to talk about opportunity cost a little later on. So, like, for example, the opportunity cost, what I had to give up in order to shoot this video, this lecture video, is I guess I would be playing video games maybe if I were not shooting this video right now. Or maybe not, because I'm technically working from home during the workday. But if I were shooting this after the workday, then yes, definitely I'd be doing something like playing video games. Or if my kids were home, I would be playing with my kids. So that would be kind of how you judge what opportunity cost is. It's the very thing that you would be doing if you weren't doing what you're doing. So like for another example would be like, if you were going to play basketball, what's the next thing you would do if you weren't playing basketball? If it's playing video games, then the opportunity cost associated with playing basketball would be playing video games. Okay. Now, there are some things that we end up looking at. It's a concept that we talk about with economize. So your textbook references that, and basically you're trying to take into account cost and benefit. So like the best combination. Now, for benefit, sometimes people don't actually take into account benefit. Sometimes, it's not up there for them. So like if I had two choices, if I had do homework and I had play video games, well, which one is going to really benefit us the most? Well, in terms of this course, homework would be it, but some people don't actually take that into account. They go ahead and go with utility, and utility just means satisfaction or how much enjoyment you get out of it. So we want to make sure that we understand that economize is you start trying to do the best combination of cost and benefit. So that's going to get into something we talk about later, which is going to be referencing trade-offs, where you're not doing one or the other. So maybe instead of just doing all video games or all homework, you try and balance the two out. So trade-offs, again, that's talking about it's not all or nothing scenario. So if I had 5 hours of free time after work, and I've got, in this scenario, I could spend 5 hours playing video games, or I could spend 5 hours playing whatever with my children. Okay, so if I were to spend 5 hours playing video games, my opportunity cost in this case is going to be 5 hours with my kids. But I don't want to do all or nothing in this scenario. What a trade-off is I give up a little bit of something to get more of something else. So in this case, when we're talking about trade-offs in that same scenario, perhaps I give up 3 hours of playing video games so that I can then spend 3 hours with my kids. So that would be an example of a trade-off. Now, what's the opportunity cost here? Now, calculating opportunity cost becomes very confusing for students sometimes, so I'm going to try and go slow and walk you through it. So if I choose to do 3 hours of video games, so we're kind of switching it up a little bit, just using different numbers here. So if I choose to do 3 hours of video games, remember I only have 5 hours of free time afterwards, what's my opportunity cost? Well, in this case, what students normally do is they say, oh, well, you gave up your opportunity cost is 2 hours of video games. That's not true. Okay, I still have some video game time. It's what would I be doing during that 3 hours? Okay, so during that 3 hours, could have been spending time with my children. So in this scenario, with the 5 hours left, if I choose to do 3 hours of video games, then my opportunity cost is 3 hours with my children, okay? And then the other way too, because I choose to increase my time with my children to 2 hours, what's my opportunity cost? Now, wrong answer a lot of students say is, well, your opportunity cost is you gave up 3 hours with your worth of time with your family. That's not how that applies. If I do 2 hours of time with my kids, then what would I be doing in that 2 hours otherwise? I would be playing video games. So in that scenario, I chose to do 2 hours of 2 hours with my family, and what the opportunity cost was 2 hours of video games. I know that can be a little bit confusing. I kind of expect some questions on our class period to be thrown my way on this topic. So if you are confused on it, make sure you write down some questions for yourself to be thrown my way when we have a chance to interact with each other. Okay. I want to give another example of opportunity cost, okay? Now, let's imagine that you go to the grocery store, okay? And we're sitting in front of the candy bar aisle, much like this child is that's on my screen right here, okay? I have enough money for one candy bar. That's all I have, okay? And so I buy my favorite candy bar, which happens to be a Fifth Avenue, okay? So what's my opportunity cost? Well, if I were not going to choose the Fifth Avenue, my second choice would be a Caramello. My third choice would be a Snickers. My fourth choice would be a Milky Way. My fifth choice might be Reese Cups. My sixth choice could be a Three Musketeers. So what is my opportunity cost here? Students oftentimes will say the wrong answer. They list everything I mentioned from the second option of Caramello all the way through Three Musketeers, and that's not correct, because we only talk about the next best option. So in this case of the child in front of the candy aisle, as we see here, their opportunity cost is a Caramello bar because that was the next best choice. Again, I can't stress this enough. When we talk about opportunity cost, it's the next best thing. We don't include everything else that's options after that. It's only the next best thing. Okay. So some things that you need to be familiar with in terms of, terms, so some vocabulary terms, is the term marginal. Anytime you see marginal anywhere in this course, marginal just simply means one more. So if we talk about marginal cost, we talk about how much would it cost for one more. Now, like in the case of my family, the video games versus family, like what's my marginal cost if I go from 3 hours of video game time to 4? Well, the marginal cost is that it costs me 1 hour with my children. Okay? Marginal benefit is just talking about, well, how much will I benefit if I do one more of these things? So, like, for instance, if you were working, you can tell what the marginal benefit would be of working one more hour. It'd be whatever your hourly rate is. Or if we were studying, what would be the change in your grade going from what you have now to what you would improve to? That would be the marginal benefit. So how much do you benefit by doing one more? Marginal utility is talking about how much satisfaction will you get from consuming one more. Now this becomes a little confusing to some because when we actually look at marginal utility, what should be happening is that the more you consume of something, the less you actually are satisfied with each one. And so one of the things that I always bring up is the nachos example. So imagine you're really super hungry and you get a giant plate of nachos. Hopefully you like nachos. If not, then just bear with me in this example. And so you eat the nachos. They're very, very satisfying. Now let's give you a second plate of nachos. Was the second plate of nachos as delicious, as satisfying as that first plate? Probably not. Now let's add a third plate, and a fourth, and a fifth. And chances are your amount of satisfaction continues to go down. Another example that I like to use in the classroom is your favorite song. What was your favorite song in 8th grade? I have no idea. I can't even remember what mine was. But let's take a look at it. Every time you hear that song, do you still have that same satisfaction? Chances are, if you hear the song that you like the most in 8th grade today, will you be as excited to hear it as you did when you first heard it, or the second time, or the third time? Maybe you're like me, where when I get a new favorite song, I basically play it on repeat for like 4 days, and then on the 5th day when I hear it come on my playlist, I'm like, oh, this song again. That would be a perfect example of the law of diminishing marginal utility. Again, diminishing marginal utility means every time I do one more of something, my utility, my satisfaction, diminishes. Okay. Other terms too that become pretty easy, talking about total cost. How much does it cost? You know, if I bought one more candy bar, what would be the total cost? Well, it's the total of all of them. Or if I bought 10 candy bars, what's the total cost? Total benefit. What's the total benefit of doing everything that's associated with my decision? Total utility. Those are measured in something called utils. You'll never have to know what those are in this course. I just throw it out there just for knowledge base. And so total utility should be pretty easy. It's what's the total satisfaction? What's the total enjoyment that you get out of your decision? Okay. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to give you a decision-making grid. And basically what I'm doing is I'm copying, as you can hear my cat in the background, I'm copying my, you be quiet. Okay. I'm copying my, I'm copying the chart that's in your textbook on page 15. And so what we're going to do here is I'm going to walk you through here some examples of how we can talk about benefit. We're talking about marginal benefit and total cost and opportunity cost, okay? So we have two decisions here. We have 6 hours of time that we have after school. And so what we're going to end up having is let's try and do a walkthrough on marginal cost, okay? So we're going to start off with 1 hour of extra study. It cost me 1 hour with friends, okay? So 1 hour of extra study, the opportunity cost is 1 hour with friends. So if I move up to 2 hours, my marginal cost is 1. My marginal benefit is going from a D to a C, okay? And then my total cost is going to be 2 hours, okay? Now let's move up from here. Let's go from 2 hours of extra study to 3 hours of extra study. My marginal cost is going to be, my marginal cost is going to be 1 hour total, okay? And then my marginal benefit is going to be from going from a C to a B, okay? So we just kind of continue those things. So if I were to say, what is my total cost of 6 hours of extra study, then what we're talking about is that we're going to have 6 hours with friends be our total opportunity cost in that case. We don't really do too much with these. We're just basically, you'll have some questions that are like, what's the total cost of going from a C in economics to a B plus in economics, and what's the opportunity cost associated with 5 hours of extra study? Well, clearly it would be 5 hours with friends. So if you can basically make those general assumptions general conclusions when looking at this particular slide, you should be just fine as far as what's concerned with our course. So hopefully you're doing okay on this particular subject. It can be a little confusing for students at times, but it's not too bad. So make sure that whatever questions you have had come up from watching this video or from your reading, that you have marked them down somewhere, and then we can address them when we all meet in person. Well, the next thing we're going to talk about in our series is going to be talking about PPC curves. That's production possibility curves. That will be kind of a short one, but it's also one that students have trouble with every year. But we'll work through it. So I'll see you next time.